Because there are a bunch of different options when working within policy sets, I figured instead of taking screenshots and writing about it, let me just create a video. First, before I get into it, I want to talk about what we are looking at and what different options are when we are within the policy sets. Starting from the top, there's lists and matrix. I'll start with the list. List basically shows you all the policies that are configured. As you can see, there are different policies that I already have in here. Status tells you if this policy is active or not. Policy name, whatever policy name I gave it, whatever source I defined, whatever service profile I defined, the destination group I defined, and what is the action that I want to be taken on it. When there is a blue arrow, that means I'm saying that all this policy traffic forwarded to the upstream device, whatever it may be, and let that device handle that traffic. When there is a green check mark, I am handling all that traffic that I have defined, the intention and the outcome of that traffic in my fabric. Let's take a look at the matrix. Matrix basically is exactly what it says it is. You can look at an overall overview of all your policies and different user groups and device groups and app groups that you have defined, how they are interacting with each other. For example, if I take the employees SSO group, I want to see if that group is able to access onboarding group. Yes, it can. And what they can access, all the essential infrastructure services. What if I want to see my contractors segment? Can they access anything on my Linux devices? Yes, they can. Because they are contractors, they can only monitor, and that's it. I do have an option to click edit and change that from here, but we will get into that later on. What if I want to create a new policy, a very specific policy from a specific group? I can do that right over here. Employee SSO to Linux. I can create my policy right over here, call it whatever I want to call it. Let's go back to the list. Now I just went over what these different screens are and different options are able to do. This is where I can define my intent and the outcome for the traffic. Next, I will actually create a policy, define my intent, and see what the outcome looks like. The first one that I want to create is, well, let's back up a little bit. I will create actually two different policies. One will be from the contractors and one will be from the employees. And I will use the SCIM groups, IDP groups that I have already created. That would be my source, and my destination would be the Linux devices. Because it's a user group, I have to choose this user group. I can choose device groups. However, that's not what I'm doing in here. But if you do want to use that, you can do that as well. User group, employee, click more details so we see what's going on. My destination would be not a user group. So I have to change that to a device group because that's where all my Linux devices are. Linux. Now I can define my server's profile because it's employees. I do want them to be able to access all the essential infrastructure services. There it is. Based on the skim group of employees, I am allowing all the infrastructure services from my source to my destination of all my Linux devices. And that's based on the fingerprint. These are the values that need to match. One important thing to keep in mind over here, this works across different networks. For example, my employees can be on one network and my Linux devices can be on a completely different network. However, because this is a zero trust fabric, every host is isolated even within the same exact network, which means my employees and Linux machines, they can be on the same exact network, but they cannot talk to each other unless I create my intention for that outcome to happen, which is exactly what I'm doing over here. Hit next. It gives you a chance to review what you are creating. Create. I'll click plus again. This time we'll create contractors. I made a little mistake over here. Let's go back and fix that because it's contractors. So I'm not going to allow them all the infrastructure services. They will just be able to monitor. As you can see, when I change that, contractors can now only use ICMP to the Linux devices. Create that policy. I need to just go back and fix the name of my previous policy that I created. Instead of employees to Linux, it will be just so it is consistent. As you can see, they both have green check mark, which means all the traffic is getting processed within the fabric. One of the benefit of that, doing it this way, is that I'm not overloading the firewall because I'm processing all the traffic within the fabric. So it takes the load off the firewall a whole bunch. But if there is a need for you to process all this by an upstream device, you absolutely can do that. In my case, I am doing that right over here where my employees segment is getting to my Palo Alto loopback. That traffic is being forwarded upstream to the firewall. That is where I have the rules allowing that traffic. So we created two different policies from the IDP group of employees and contractors to the Linux devices. And if the IDP group is going to be employees, they will be able to access a bunch of different essential services on those devices. But if it's an IDP group of contractors, they can only ping those devices to monitor them. That's about it. This is a very powerful tool because keep in mind, it's a zero trust fabric, which means every single host is isolated. There is no east-west traffic allowed by default, even within the same network. So these policies can be from one network to another network, but they can also be within the same network from very specific devices to very specific devices. I can have a whole bunch of different kind of devices in one network. I can have printers, IoT devices, some kind of scanners. The policy that I have created very specifically apply to only IDP group of employees and contractors to only my Linux devices, and that's it. These can be in all can be in the same exact network, but this policy will only apply to my employees, contractors, and Linux devices. That's it. If I want to have a different intent or same intent, similar outcome, I can, for other devices, I can do that also here. Or what if I want to take the traffic from all the other devices in that network and forward it to the upstream device and process it there instead of processing it in my fabric? I can do that as well. Let's test that out. I can say something like employee segment to my device group of Linux. Well, there's a similar policy, so let's pick something else instead. We'll we'll pick Ubuntu devices. If I want that traffic to be forwarded upstream to the firewall, this is what it will look like. In this case, I'm allowing all traffic from this segment going to all the Ubuntu devices, but it's getting forwarded to the firewall. I can create rules in the firewall if I want to handle this traffic differently. The flexibility that I get in here is very impressive because I can, based on the context and identity, create my policies and not have to worry about which networks to which network and having to remember what is that network. I'm no longer using IP addresses. I can if I want to. That option is still there. However, why should I use that? One, I can define my intent and achieve an outcome by using context and identity, which I think is pretty awesome.